Before we dive into a little more detail about these different versions, just a quick reminder on how we changed that version in the first place. And that's very simple. This is the simplest part of the version, is just setting it. And if you're on a switch that just gives you options to versions 1 and 2, that means you're on a switch that isn't capable of running switch 3. You will see those in the real world. And here we've got one that can run 1 through 3, and you just set it with VTP version, and both of them right now are running version 2. Now when version 2 came along, there were some improvements, and some of these might not really be applicable to your network situation, but it's good stuff to know. Version 2 supports token ring, switching, and VLANs, and version 1 didn't have anything to do with that. Version 2 performs a consistency check when changes are made to VLANs or the VTP configuration at the command line. Now the consistency check is performed on the VLAN names and numbers, which helps in turn to prevent the incorrect names from propagation throughout the network. Now of course, you know, the transparent switches had to get involved in here somehow. The transparent switches, if they're running version 2, they will forward VTP advertisements via their trunk ports, even if the VTP domain name is different on the switch that it's trunking with. With version 1, the domain and version number of the trunking switches had to match that of the transparent switch. Now those were some solid improvements, but we've got some great ones that came along with version 3. The first one we did see earlier, that it introduced the VTP mode off, and if you're on a switch that can't run version 3, you're not going to see the off option. So you've probably seen in past studies or on past switches or even on current ones, just client server transparent. Version 3 can also be enabled and disabled at the port level rather than being an all-in-one deal. You know, we're either going to run this server mode on the switch or we're not, or we're either going to run VTP on all the ports or we're not. You can enable it and disable it at the port level. The biggest improvement is with secure mode, which is a fancy way of saying we've got a VTP password. With previous versions of VTP, it was pretty darn easy to compromise the password. I'm going to go ahead and set a password here of CCIE. I do want it to be different than our domain name. You'll see why here shortly. So I'm setting the password to CCIE on both switches. And so far all is well. So we go back to switch 2 and we run show VTP password. This is not my idea of secure mode. It's probably not yours either. This is the only show password command I can think of. Show VTP password, and by golly, you know, there it is. There's also a trickier way to see that. I'll show you this one. What is it? More? I was just going to repeat it. More and then VLAN.dat. What we're actually doing here is looking at the raw contents of the VLAN.dat file. And you can see some things that look kind of familiar over here. You know, here's VLAN 100 just on 2 lines. Here's VLAN 300. I created a VLAN 301 during the break. There it is. And where is the where's the VTP password? Right there, in plain text. You know, you got to know where to look, but it is there, and that's not the kind of thing we want. So obviously improvement was needed, and to see that improvement I'm going to need to bring switch 2 up to version 3. Let me hit escape. Sorry for the extra scrolling there, because that will burn your retinas by the time all those lines are gone. So let's go ahead with conf t. Burn my retinas so bad I forgot how to spell conf. VTP version 3. And we're going to get any other messages? Yes, we do. We do get a message here. VLAN 6 old config file read. It simply says old version 2 VLAN config file detected and read OK. Version 3 files will be written in the future, which makes perfect sense. So let's, I want to take the password off and then put it back. And you can simply put no in front of it. It's going to clear the device VTP password. Now, I want to show you some options. Now, we do have the option just to put it in the old way, and it's going to be very, very, very visible. We have hidden and we have secret. And the problem is if you go with the secret version, and I'll put that here, it's going to tell you that it has to be 32 characters in length. That's not exactly something I want to do right now. Hidden, though, let's take a look at that option. Okay, nothing else there, so let's do the hidden option. And it's setting the password this time. So that's what we get now when we do show VTP password. VTP password, and then it's just going to be the hash. Because with the hidden option, that's all that's kept. You know, with secret, the password is still kept in the config, but with hidden, only the hash result of the password is actually shown in the config. So that's what I like to go with, is the hidden password. But you do have to be running in version 3 for that. And also, I'm not going to reopen the file and try to find it in all those lines, but Cisco's own documentation states and own theory states that you can't look in the VLAN.dat file any longer and see it. What we'd have to do is erase the one that had it in clear text, reload, and then we'd have a fresh one, and then we could go forward with this. So we're not going to do that right now, but I do want to go with that theory that lets us know that we can't just open VLAN.dat and look around. So that was really the biggest improvement, or one of the bigger improvements with version 3, and here is another one. And it fights the VTP sync problem that we saw earlier in this chapter. And we know that can be pretty serious. Well, what version 3 does, it helps us prevent that from happening by introducing the concept of the primary server. Now in version 3, when you configure a VTP server as the primary server, that's the only device that can actually update other switches in the VTP domain. And you use the VTP primary command to make a VTP server the primary server. Now note a couple things here from the board. First off, it's going to ask you for the VTP password. After you enter that, it's going to do a little check for conflicting devices and then say, okay, do you want to continue? So you got to know the password, and then you got to just say one more time, yes, I'm sure this is what I want. And then if all goes well, you get the little message about it has become the primary server for the VLAN VTP feature. And that's it. Next video is the last one on VTP. I know there's a lot of detail for a protocol that actually I've got something for you after that. It's not a final word about VTP, it's a final word about the versions. We'll talk about that, and then something very practical with VTP pruning, and we'll hit that in the next 2 videos.